Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Reckless Optimist podcast. My name is Megan. I'm a family nurse practitioner with a deep passion for mental health. On this show, we showcase guests who have shown tenacity, grit, mental strength, and who embody the word resilience. A quick disclaimer before we start. This show is not a substitute for mental diagnosis or treatment. We do recommend that if you're struggling with your own emotional well-being, you see a mental health provider. I'm so excited that you guys are here. Let's get into it. Hey, everyone. Today on the podcast, we have Kaitlyn. I met Kaitlyn through the online recovery community. She has a really fun, sober Instagram page that I followed and just loved her content and thought she would be great for the show. She shares her story tonight of overcoming addiction. It is a beautiful, transformational story about a mother's love and a second chance at life. Kaitlyn is coming in from Surrey, England. I think I'm saying that right. So she actually lives in the town like 15 minutes away from where they filmed the movie The Holiday. Such a cute movie. I can picture that little town in England right now in my head with the cobblestone streets. She is an amazing person, and I'm just extremely honored to have her on the show. I know you guys are going to love this story. Let's get into it. Hey, everyone. Help me welcome Kaitlyn to the podcast. I am so honored to have you on the show. So I actually met you online and asked you to come on the show because I'd been following your content. You have a very cool sober recovery Instagram page. What's the name of that page?
Yeah, it's sober as a mother focus.
I love that. I love that so much. And before we jumped on, we were talking about how you're actually my third across the pond interview. And so where are you coming in from?
I live in a place called Surrey in England, and nobody knows where that is, but I can tell you that if you've ever watched the film The Holiday, I live about 15 minutes from where that was filmed. So it's very
I
pretty.
love that. I love that so much. It's one of my favorite movies. The setting in England is so beautiful, and I want to go there. I'm going to come visit you. Are you available next week?
I am, yeah.
Yes, it's such a beautiful, beautiful place. I've been to England before. When I was young, I went to London. So how far are you from London?
I'm about an hour from London. So
Okay.
not far. I used to live in London. In fact, actually, one of the reasons I moved out here was because I really thought I would get away from all the naughtiness that was going on in London. But actually, let me tell you that it's worse out here.
Worse in the country.
It's worse in the countryside, yeah.
Yeah. It follows you. Yeah. So my experience with London was we went on a family trip there. We went all over Europe and for like 2 weeks, but in London, my dad loved to tell this story. And so we were in Piccadilly Circus, which is like kind of like, I guess you would say Times Square in New York. And we were on the double decker bus and my whole family got off the bus, but I stayed on the bus for whatever reason. I was like 8. I was lost in London and my dad was like chasing the bus. It was this whole dramatic story. I was eventually found. But yeah, it kind of sounds like an Olsen Twins movie.
It really does. Or like The Parent Trap, one of those kind of films.
Yeah, such good movies. Well, we're going to start our episode out with a quote like we do each time. And the quote I have for your episode is from an actor named Rob Lowe. Do you know him?
I think so.
Yeah, handsome fella. So the quote goes, "Being in recovery has given me everything of value that I have in my life: integrity, honesty, fearlessness, faith, a relationship with God, and most of all, gratitude. Sobriety was the best gift I ever gave myself." What does that quote mean to you?
Wow, there's so much in that quote, actually. That's I think that's a lot to break down, but I think my initial instinct when I hear that is to remember that anything that I put before my sobriety, I'm going to lose. So all those things that he's talking about that are, the most important things, if you let go of your recovery, you're going to lose all of those things. So that's just what sort of came to my mind straight away. But I can totally relate to that quote. When I came into recovery, I didn't come in to find God, but I do live a very spiritual lifestyle now, which goes hand in hand with my recovery. Every day I practice gratitude, whether that's with a list or whether that's sort of stopping and processing and feeling throughout the day. And then the gifts of recovery, they just keep on coming. The longer that you're in, the more you're aware of what there is to be grateful for in life, what to appreciate, how to be present. So yeah, I can relate to that quote a lot.
Yeah, I loved it too. All the words that he said, integrity, honesty, gratitude, I tracked with all of that. I also adore Rob Lowe. He's just a baddie. And I love that he is like covering out loud in a world of celebrities who are not in a sober lifestyle. So I feel like he's a really good role model in that world. And this quote made me think about what gifts have I gotten back in recovery. And I think the first one was to be able to rediscover who I am authentically to myself. The second gift I feel like I got was being able to connect with others again instead of being so disconnected. And the third one was allowed me to have stronger relationships again with my family and with my friends. So I love that quote. Well, we're so excited to hear your story. So wherever you feel comfortable, just take us back.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll start with like when I had my first drink. I was about age 9 and I was given it by a family member. And although I didn't start drinking alcoholically straight away, I do remember it very, very well. I remember the feeling that I got from it. I felt happy and elated and like I could let myself loose and have some fun. And that was a new feeling for me. You know, I really wasn't a very happy child. You know, when I look back at my whole life, I can't see any area of my childhood where I felt happy or any of my teenage years where I felt happy. So I think that moment of that drink with my friend, you know, really stood out to me because it was enjoyable. And it probably wasn't until I was sort of 14 I started drinking much more frequently. And, you know, I was allowed to. It wasn't anything strange. The friends that I had did the same thing. So it wasn't abnormal. But it was when I smoked weed the first time, that's when I really fell in love with something, you know, with a substance. Because as much as I did like alcohol, I didn't like the feeling that it gave me afterwards, which was the sickness and the hangovers. Really didn't enjoy that. It was only the feeling during that I enjoyed with alcohol. Whereas with weed, I'd never laughed like that. I'd never smiled like that until I first started smoking. I was about 15 then. And by 16, I was using Class A drugs. And again, funnily enough, with the Class A drugs, the first time I did one, I didn't really feel anything bothered by it. However, there was obviously something in it because within a month, I was using it almost daily. The progression was really, really quick for me. As I was growing up, I really didn't want to upset anybody. I always wanted to be liked. I couldn't bear it if you were unhappy with me. And taking drugs helped me to be somebody that I liked. I left school at 16, and so taking drugs was really quite easy for me to do that on a daily basis. I can't actually think of any days when I didn't take something, even at that age. You know, lucky or unlucky, I'm not sure how to look at it, but I was introduced to like the London party scene and I spent a lot of time on that circuit, and that also lent itself really well to being able to take lots of drugs and to drink a lot, and everybody else was doing it again. So it was just a completely normal thing for me to do. And probably by 18, I'd noticed that the way that I was doing it and how much I was doing it and how often I was doing it was probably wasn't normal. And the consequences were starting to come in at quite a young age. I found myself locked in people's flats against my will, and I found myself mixed up in an international sex gang, and I found myself being with drug dealers a lot of the time. And I never really put that down to the fact that I liked to use drugs. If I'm honest, I almost got a buzz from being in these unsafe environments with these dodgy people because it was almost like I was getting away with something. And I was beating the system in a way. I don't know if that really makes sense, but to me it made sense. And I knew something wasn't quite right, but I chose to ignore it, and I just chose to carry on because even by then I couldn't stop. Having said that, I got pregnant quite young. I was 20 when I found out I was pregnant with my first child, and I did stop then. And I stopped for quite a long time, and I almost forgot that I thought I had a problem. And so slowly, as I started to regain what I called my life, it crept, all these drugs and the drinking, it all crept back in. And I'd say within a couple of years, it was almost daily using and drinking again. And I got pregnant again. And again, this time, I managed to stop, but I really noticed how desperately unhappy I was without drink and drugs. And I think I lasted about 3 weeks after my second child was born until I started doing them daily again. I thought, and by this sort of point, I'm probably about 25, and I'm starting to notice that I'm really experiencing a lot of paranoia. And a lot of psychosis, but I didn't realize that's what it was. I thought I was perfectly sane in thinking that people were after me and people were watching me and people were trying to get into my flat during the night, and I'd spend nights in full-on psychosis, high as a kite, just so scared and trembling that people are trying to come in and get me. And this went on for such a long time that I moved out of London, and we spoke about it earlier. It wasn't my only reason, but it definitely was part of the reason, was that I thought I could get away from it all if I moved out into the countryside. And being the addict that I am, I, no pun intended, but sniffed it out straight away. It took me 10 days and I was back up and running. And it's just the endless cycle of using and not sleeping and then using again to get through the next day. And then, oh my God, I've started again. What am I going to do? Okay, I might as well finish off what I've got. You know, I used to do this thing. I was talking to a friend about it the other day, where you'd have some drugs, and then you'd think, oh my God, somebody's coming for me, somebody's watching me. Okay, I better get rid of it. I better do it all. So you get rid of it, and then you've got rid of it, and you think, oh, well, I need to get some more now. And you just repeat these endless, crazy, insane cycles. The amount of nights that I spent up terrified, you would think that I would know the next day that if I do that again, the exact same thing's going to happen again. But the addict mind forgets very quickly. It forgets very, very quickly how bad it was. I would spend nights up praying, please God, keep me alive tonight. Please don't let me die tonight. I promise I'll never ever do this again. If you keep me alive tonight, you know, I won't do it again. And he answered my prayers, you know, kept me alive, but I still did the same thing over and over and over again. I now have 3 children. And as much as I love every single one of my children, they were not enough to get me clean and sober. I would love to say that they were, but if something out there is more powerful than a mother's love for her children, it's got to be pretty evil and pretty powerful, right? And that's what drugs did for me. They took my power away from me. They took my sanity, my peace of mind, my self-respect, my ability to be a good mother. They took everything from me. And I had many, many rock bottoms. And people always say to me, you know, you've got to hit rock bottom to want to get sober. And that just wasn't the case for me. I had many rock bottoms. Just one instance I can think of straight away was I was using, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I didn't recognize who I saw, but what I did notice is that my face had gone grey and my lips had gone blue. So, you know, my heart was giving up, and I still went back and did more because I had to finish it. I couldn't leave it. In fact, I got so unwell that at one point I was told I was never going to walk again. I became really, really unwell, but none of those things got me sober. It really wasn't that. It was a moment of, you know, I can't even really explain it. It was like a gift of desperation, and a window of opportunity crossed over and came through me. I don't know how else to explain it than something reaching every fiber of me and telling me, this is your time. You have a choice now, Kaitlyn. Go down that route of the harder stuff, which I had been thinking about, or you're going to have to suck everything up, swallow some really hard pills and go and get sober. And luckily I had researched before my 3rd child was born, what do you do if you're taking too many drugs? And the 12-step fellowship came up. But I had a look through it and I thought, there's absolutely no way I can do that. So it was another 6 years until I went back and looked at it again. And I didn't really think that I was an addict, but I knew that I had a problem, and I knew that I couldn't stop, and I knew that I couldn't trust myself in any way, shape or form. So I took myself to the next meeting that was in my area. I went and had a look at it, and I sat there and I was like, hi, I'm Kaitlyn. I don't know if I really need to be here. I've just come to find out what it's all about. And by the end of it, I was like, hi, Kaitlyn, addict. I'm going to get sponsored and I'll be back next week. The honesty that I got from the people in the rooms, I mean, I don't even have a word to describe that feeling and the power of honesty. And that is why I share my stories online. And if anyone asks me to do share in a meeting, I'll go and do that. If people ask me to do podcasts, I'll come and do that. Because if it wasn't for the honesty that I heard in that room that night, I don't know if I would have been able to identify of what I am, but B, would have ever been able to get the help and the support that I needed to get sober. I think what really held me back for such a long time was that I was a mother, and that I couldn't be honest with anybody about what was going on because I was so scared that I would lose my children. Despite the fact that I wasn't the best mum, all I ever wanted was to be a good mum. But drugs took that power away from me for way too long. And I did get to a point where I was willing to go to any lengths to get clean and sober. And if that meant that I had to admit to everybody what I was doing and what I was and how much I needed help, then so be it, because I was at a point where I was going to die or I was going to get better and deal with the consequences. And I did choose to get better and deal with the consequences, thankfully. So yeah, I've been in the 12-step fellowship now for 1,026 days. Was my second meeting. I'd love to say I got sober after my first meeting. I didn't. I went out and had a couple of last hurrahs, which were awful. But since I made that full-on decision to go back, get a sponsor, I haven't left the 12-step fellowship. I've been in there every single day. People always say to me, what, haven't you relapsed? And I think, I relapsed. Every single time I promised myself I wasn't going to do it, and I got up and did it again, the same thing the next morning, I relapsed. But have I relapsed since I've been in a 12-step fellowship? No, I haven't. I still have to watch out for addict behaviours though, because though I don't obsess about drink and drugs anymore, that those thoughts do still come in my head. I'm not going to lie, because I do still think about them, but I don't think about them in the same way, and I don't obsess about them. I can live without them. But I have to be very careful with other things. When I first came into sobriety, shopping was shocking for me. I shopped a lot. Eating can be quite a tricky one for me. I do struggle, and maybe this isn't the healthiest thing to say, but I'm always really open and honest about this, because what's the point of being here if I'm not going to be open and honest? Is that I struggle with the amount of weight that I've put on in sobriety. But with something like food, you've got to eat it, haven't you? You've got to have food. So trying to get a hold of that is probably my biggest challenge in sobriety, if I'm honest. I've completely cut sugar out because I had no control over that. That was exactly the same. You wake up in the morning and say, right, I promise I'm not gonna eat 3 bars of chocolate and 2 bags of sweets and 3 packets of biscuits today. I'm not gonna do it. And I've already, by 9:30, half a packet deep in a packet of biscuits. So I had to just cut out sugar completely, because they do say actually that is one of the most powerful drugs that there is. So that had to go. And then the addict behaviors that I still also need to look out for are things like more the emotional side of things. I have to watch my ego. I have to watch self-centered fear. I have to watch out for resentment. I have to watch out for being ungrateful, and I have to watch out for that negative voice in my head that likes to tell me that I'm not good enough and that I haven't done a good enough job. I work on my sobriety and my recovery every single day. I'm very much a believer that sobriety and recovery are two very different things. Getting sober is just the very, very beginning of this. Being recovered is something that I work on every single day. Sometimes I can find it challenging. It's not always easy, but it's always easier than being in the madness and being that parent I was. The best gift of sobriety is that I am a present and I'm an able mother. And if that is everything that I achieve with this life that I have, great. I'm okay with that. I think when we're in the madness, all we crave is just a very simple, normal life. And I have that now. I really do. And I'm super grateful for that.
Yes, you did a beautiful job sharing your story. Amazing. I know before we jumped on, you were like, I didn't prepare, but I actually prefer that. I feel like it's more organic and authentic when you just speak from the heart. And I could tell that you were. You got me a little bit about the mother's love. I was tearing up when you were talking about that. That was really powerful what you said. I wanted to talk to you about the weight gain because that happened to me. You are not alone. And I think people think when you quit alcohol, you're going to get super skinny. It's actually the opposite because a lot of times people will swap the alcohol for sugar. So I gained weight in sobriety, especially that first year. I gained probably 30 pounds the first year. And then 3 years in, I looked over and I was 50 pounds overweight. And at the time, I didn't even notice. And I do not feel guilty about that at all. I think when you're in recovery, you've got to work on just not drinking that first year. And it's almost harm reduction in a way to swap it out for the sugar. You're not going to have it all figured out in 1 year. I think I thought, oh, well, 1 year in, I'll be a modern day prophet, a fitness model. No, I just needed to stay sober. You know what I mean? I couldn't figure out the nutrition and the sugar until I was 5 years in, and so I would give yourself some grace there. Obviously, sugar isn't healthy, but it's better than the alternative of alcohol or drugs.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the first year it was definitely you do whatever you can do to stay sober.
What I used to do that first year, I actually walked around with a bag of peanut butter M&Ms everywhere I went. Like not like a little bag, like the big gallon size one, and just would eat those constantly. I guess, as part of it, you were craving the alcohol, which is sugar, and so you're replacing it with that. So, I mean, honestly, like you had mentioned, I was going to do whatever it took to get sober. If gaining 30 pounds and eating peanut M&Ms is what it took, I was going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You just do what you've got to do to get through, especially in the beginning. Whatever it takes, you do that. I did whatever my sponsor told me to do, and she told me not to worry about what I was eating, so I didn't. But I think it's really common, particularly with women, that there is a link between addiction and eating disorders. And for me, I always had an issue with food. My first drug, actually my first drug was fantasy, I'd say, was this fantasy mind of mine. But secondly was food. I was very secretive as a child. I'd hide food. I'd eat in secret. I ate way too much, and I really ballooned as a child. And then, then I started seeing other people, and I actually went the complete opposite and didn't eat at all. And so the drugs that I was taking, one of the benefits for me of that was that I didn't need to eat, and it kept me really skinny. So I think realistically, I've probably had an eating disorder alongside my drug using for all that time. But then when we get sober, I'm sure you've realized this as well, but you get sober and it's almost like the onion layers. They start to peel. Just when you get to feeling a little bit stronger, something else is revealed that you need to work on in your own personal life. And for me, recently it's been, I really need to work on this eating and sugar situation for my next layer of healing.
Yeah, I loved what you said there. It's kind of like the analogy of like if you chase two rabbits, you know what I mean? Like you really only can chase one rabbit at a time in terms of like what are you working towards. But you're absolutely right about eating disorders and the correlational studies there are with alcohol use disorder. They really go hand in hand. And I think for women, men, maybe I'm generalizing here, but they can have a few extra pounds and society just accepts that. But as women, I feel like we have an immense amount of pressure, one, to look amazing all of the time, to snap back after we've had our babies, to be, 40 and fit and all of these things. I feel like we have such pressure from society in general to be a certain weight. So that's plays into the eating disorder of it all. And we have so much of our self-worth wrapped up in our size. And I hate that because your size really doesn't matter. The focus should really be on your health. How healthy do you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Having said that, I definitely feel healthier having cut out sugar. I've noticed it's made a difference to like my hormones as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually interesting when you look at the studies about sugar and like rats and how it's worse than cocaine. I wanted to ask you some follow-up questions about your story. How has your relationship with your children changed in sobriety?
Wow. Oh my gosh. In so many ways, my relationship has changed. I would say, and all three of them are so different. It's changed with all of them. I would say my behaviors have changed. So for them, I'm much calmer and consistent. I'm much more present with them, particularly with my oldest child. I feel like my relationship with her has really, really improved. And I would put some of that down to the fact that I am more level-headed. I often hear people say, well, the good news is that you get your feelings back, and the bad news is you get your feelings back. I don't relate to that because I always had lots of feelings. They were just crazy and out of control, which means I overreacted to certain situations, or I underreacted too. So I didn't put boundaries in with my children a lot of the time. There was a lot of guilt. So I would overcompensate in other ways with them. And now I'd like to just think that I'm the best version of myself that I can be for them. Sometimes they don't always like that because they're not used to me putting in boundaries, but that's what a good mom does, you know?
Yeah, that's very relatable. You had mentioned shame and overcoming guilt. How do you feel that has been over these last 3 years? What has helped you overcome the shame or reframe it in your mind?
And I think it was one of those like aha moments for me, because I did carry the guilt towards my children more than anything. I carried that around with me for such a long time. And in one of our readings, it says that until you let go of that guilt, you'll never be able to fully grow and experience the sober life. And not too long ago, I was sitting in meditation and it came to me, if the universe or God or however you want to see, you know, the higher power, if that power saw fit enough to give me this sober life and a chance of recovery, they must have forgiven me for all the bad things that I'd done. And if that power can see fit to forgive me, then I must too, because who am I to override? That's not for me to do. And it just sat with me, and I thought, and I felt, wow, I feel like I've forgiven myself for what I did. It helps having a good understanding of the illness and addictions. It's exactly the same thing, but having a really good understanding of that and knowing that actually that's not my fault that I got that. You have person A or you have person B, and they can do exactly the same amounts, but person A will become addicted and person B won't. I'm person A. That's not my fault. That's my genetic makeup, and that's experiences that I've had to sped that process up for me. That isn't my fault. Can I forgive myself? Yeah, I can forgive myself because I do everything in my power to make sure that A, I don't go back there, but B, I'm not that person anymore. And that helps to let go of the shame as well. And, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, I do share very publicly my addiction, sobriety, and recovery. And I mainly do that because I know that there are so many other women and mothers in particular out there who are doing what I was doing, but either are still like me and just think, oh, it's just a bad habit or it's just a bad problem, or they're too scared to ask for help because of the children or the stigma attached to being a mother or a woman who is an addict or an alcoholic. So I share my stories to show people that it doesn't have to be that way. I didn't lose my children. And the only reason I didn't lose them is because I did go and get that help. If I hadn't have asked for that help, I probably would have done. And I just feel really passionately about reaching other women and mums, because I just don't want them to feel like I felt, or to not get help for as long as I didn't get help.
Yeah. I love how you recover out loud. Not a lot of people do that. And that's a personal decision depending on your profession, whatever. And I was so afraid to recover out loud because I'm a provider. Am I never going to be hired again? Are people not going to want to come see me in my practice? All of those things, but to me, it was a risk that paid off. And the benefit I get from helping people overweighed all of those worries. How did your Instagram come to be in terms of your recovery page? How long have you been doing that, and how has the feedback been?
I've been doing it for about 2 years, but to be honest, like it's just me. It was never really intended to be specifically a sobriety and recovery page. It was just me sharing me basically and what's going on for me. And it's sort of organically grown into a space where I can potentially, offer some support and some advice, and still just share me, because people often say to me, oh, I don't believe that you were that bad, or I don't believe that you were an addict. You don't look like you would have done that. And I think it's so important that people from all walks of life share their experiences of addiction and recovery, because it's just not the case that everybody ends up on a park bench or in prison or homeless. I think a lot of people can hide behind the fact that it hasn't got that bad. yet. It's so easy, isn't it, to look at other people and say, well, I'm not as bad as them, so I don't have a problem. So for me, it's, although sometimes I do think, oh my God, was I not a bad enough addict to share my story? I keep going because I'm not the only one out there.
Yeah. So in your 12-step group, have you ever sponsored anyone? I know you had mentioned you got a sponsor, but have you had the opportunity to sponsor anyone else?
Yeah, I've sponsored other women. I don't have any sponsees at the moment, but that's the way it goes. There's so many less women in 12-step fellowships than men, so you don't always have a sponsee. But yes, I have taken women through the steps. That after seeing the change in my own home with my own children, that's the next best thing, is watching another woman's eyes light up when you take them through the work and seeing how their lives change and how their relationships with their children change. It's beautiful. It's such an honor when somebody asks me to sponsor them. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to help them, show them what worked for me.
Yeah. If you look at the stats, the first year is where a lot of people relapse. And you had mentioned that that's not part of your story. What do you think were the things that kept you sober that first year?
Oh, so one of the reasons why I love doing podcasts is because I listened to podcasts all of the time. My head was so busy still, and I needed to keep that head focused on something, but something useful. So I listened to a ton of podcasts. I listened to loads and loads of speaker tapes as well. There are a lot of them on YouTube, and a speaker tape is just like a main share that you'd hear in meetings. I listened to loads of those: yoga, meditation, prayer, unity, speaking to other women every day. It was a big part. Women who understand my thinking, and where I was at and what I was going through. That was invaluable service to the fellowship. So I really got stuck in. You know what? I did recovery like a good addict does anything. I just threw all of me and everything into it. And, you do get to a point where you're like, okay, actually, I'm putting a little bit too much into this. Recovery, I think, is all about learning how to have balance in your life. And so the first year was spent just everything into fellowship. As I got towards the end of that, it was about finding the right balance between home life and fellowship.
That's really well said. I know for me, and I don't know if you can relate to this, maybe so because you started when you were young as well, but I had no idea who I was. So I was 34 years old and had no clue who I even was as a person. So these last 6 years, I've been discovering who I am. And now I have all of these new hobbies and new activities and new perspective on life. What are some new discoveries you found about yourself or any new hobbies that you have?
Wow. Do you know what? Somebody asked me the other day when I did a podcast, they're like, who are you? And I was like, I still don't know. And that's okay. I like doing anything that is positive and has a positive, energetic feel to it. So I do love yoga. I still do that. I love going to like my friends hold full moon ceremonies. I love doing things like that. Anything spiritual, I'm here for. I just went to a healing sanctuary last weekend. I loved that. Do you know what? I just love doing like the normal things whilst I am exploring who I am. And by normal things, I mean, like, I really enjoy going for a cup of tea with my girlfriends and just chatting. I really love being with my children. That's my favorite thing. I genuinely love spending time with them. In fact, my oldest daughter just got her first big full-time job. I'm really missing spending time with her because I just love being with them. Yeah, I'm still really exploring who I am. Every now and again, I have a bit of a dip and think, oh my God, I don't know who I am. Like, who is me? Who's Kaitlyn? What do I even do with my life? I think I just explore for now. And that's cool. That's okay. It's very easy to look back over the past, well, almost 3 years and think, oh, do you know what? I haven't achieved anything. I haven't really got anything else going for me. And then I have a really good look back and I think, oh my gosh, I've achieved so much. I've taken other women through the steps. I've stayed sober. I've made friends. I've studied. I've almost finished my second course in counselling. I've been really busy exploring.
Yeah. I love that so much. And you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know exactly who you are. That can be a constantly evolving state. But I think the beauty there is that in recovery, that curiosity for life and the wanting to learn comes back. Almost like that childlike joy comes back again.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like for us in recovery, it's like we don't want to waste any minutes that we have now and moving forward. I don't want to waste a minute of my life. I've been given a second chance.
I felt the same way, girl, because I felt like I wasted so much time. And now I'm like, I'm not wasting any time. Every minute of the day, I'm going to be working towards something. I love that so much. What are your goals moving forward? You had mentioned counseling. I think that's great. What are your goals in life, your goals with your career, your goals with recovery?
Do you know what? I have aspirations, and my aspirations are I would like to become a drug and alcohol therapist, or drug and alcohol therapist. I'd like to have my own podcast. I like to educate other people on addiction, not just with the therapy side of it. It's not necessarily me telling them anything. Like, I like teaching people. So I like to do something with that. I just want to go with the flow and see what opportunities come my way, see how I evolve as a person, because that happens all the time.
I love what you said about the podcast. So I was in your shoes this time last year, being a guest on different shows. And I said the same thing to a host. I said, I think I want to start my own podcast one day, because very much like you, listening to sober podcasts that first year is really one of the main foundations of what got me sober, listening to different stories and different people's testimonies. So yeah, I would keep that one definitely on your vision board. What were some of your favorite sober podcasts that you listened to?
Do you know what I love? I think it's called Keep Coming Back.
Okay.
It's an American one, which is all like AA shares, but I love that one. That was really good. And then I love Russell Brand. He's got some great sobriety podcasts out. I listened to a lot of a lady called Dr. Lemke.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I love her. She's great.
Didn't she write Dopamine Nation? I thought.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Great
Yeah,
book.
she did. So I remember listening to her quite a lot. Gosh, there was lots. And I still listen to podcasts. I really do. I love them, especially in the car. My head can still get busy. So having a podcast on in the car is quite a good way to learn something, to bring me back down to earth. And hearing other people's stories is great because it reminds me of where I was. And I can't ever forget that.
Yeah. When I made it to year 5, I knew I wanted to give back in some type of way. Sponsoring someone would be amazing. For me, that avenue was a little bit more difficult. I only did AA for about a year. And also the commitment to that sponsee. I am such an overachiever. I don't know that I could commit to how I wanted to commit to someone. So the podcast arena was a great opportunity for me to give back. I think when you give back in this way, one, it keeps you accountable. It keeps you in recovery. But then that giving back to the population that served you is just so full circle, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say has been your best or biggest blessing in recovery?
Being present for my children. Yeah. And I don't go to work because I just want to make sure I'm here for them all the time. If they're at school and they need something, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm always here. They always know where I am.
That is such a great gift to give to them. I felt very similar to that. Well, we have made it to the lightning round of our episode. So I asked the same 5 questions to each guest because it's a fun get to know you. My listeners get invested after they hear your story and who you are as a person. So, all right, the first question is, you're given 3 options. You have to choose one. Would you shark dive, bungee jump, or skydive?
Skydive.
Okay. Have you ever done it before?
No. It's something that's been in my head since I was a kid that I want to do it, but I'm too scared.
That's also on the vision board, podcasting and skydiving. Number 2, you're in a simulation. Every time you walk into a room, the same song plays. What's your song?
The first thing that came into my head was Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley.
Okay. That sounds like a fun one. Love it. Number 3, what is your favorite Disney movie?
Oh, that's such a hard one. So many. Probably Beauty and the Beast.
That is I haven't heard that one yet, but that is classic. Belle was so smart. She was probably the prettiest princess, I think. Number 4, what is something you're obsessed with?
I'm obsessed with helping other women.
I love that.
Sobriety journeys. Yeah, I am obsessed with that.
It's a great answer. All right, last question. Number 5, what does freedom mean to you?
Space. That was the first word that came into my head. When you said freedom, I just thought of space, being able to breathe, not having to watch my back. Wow, that's an interesting question.
I love what you said, space. I mean, I agree with you. I felt like in addiction, you're like wrapped in this mental prison, you know, and then when you're out of it, you have all of this space in your life,
Mhm.
mental space, physical space. Yeah.
Time.
Emotional space, time. Yeah. Yeah. That was a great answer. I can't thank you enough for coming on. You're going to help so many people with your story. I love your new take on life. I love how passionate you are about helping other women. And I love, love, love that you have big goals for yourself.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on here. It really is an honor. And yeah, if we do just help one woman, even if it's just planting a seed, then it's worth it, isn't it?
Always. All right. You have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.